Hello and welcome everybody to the 6 Pixels Under podcast. I am nerdSlayer, your host, and this is episode 52. There's a couple things I wanted to get out of the way first, and that's going to be probably the current gaming topics section, which we usually do first. After that, I'm going to make an announcement on the MMO roundtable, which is good news for the podcast and the future of the podcast. So that will be after the current news, and then after that, we will go to the MMOs on the Go segment, where we have at least like 6 articles or 6 different things to react to. And then finally, I will top it off with a soapbox talking about my first impressions in ArcheAge Unchained, and then end the podcast with a call-in segment. So today will be a little bit shorter just because I'm tired, guys. Past 2 days, I've played like 25 hours of MMOs. I'm tapped out, man. What's going on, everybody? Angel Spit, Jeet, Pojit, not sure how to pronounce it. Pojit. Johnny1579, of course, Card, who's our resident moderator today. Well, usually always, but he is here today. All right, let's go ahead and dive into our first topic. Might as well. This one came up pretty recently, actually. I think I just got this today. But apparently, now Tencent has become the biggest shareholder of the Secret World developer. I don't know why they put Secret World developer. They should just put Funcom. But hey, everyone remembers them for doing the Secret World, I guess. I don't know if that's even the case. That's kind of why I was questioning why they would put the Secret World. Anyway, so it actually, in the article it says, they've entered into a share purchase agreement to acquire 29% of the shares in Funcom. Now, where it gets interesting, at least in my opinion, is if you go down here, it says, Tencent has agreed to acquire all shares belonging to the Norway-based KGJ Capital AS, which is currently the largest shareholder in Funcom. So essentially, they bought out the largest shareholder, and now they own the majority of the company in terms of shares, like percentage-wise. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they own a majority stake yet, with only 29% of shares. It wouldn't be out of the question, though, considering that they are now the largest, apparently, shareholder, that they could actually use their money that they have from League of Legends and all of the other companies that they have their hands in. And then they could just possibly buy out Funcom's shares in order to get a majority stake so they can control the board and control all the major decisions. This is relevant right now because Funcom's working on a sandbox open world game, whatever you want to call it, of sorts. I don't mean to say that as an insult, but it's not an MMO, but I'm sure someone at some point will call it that. But it says right here, open world sandbox game set in the Dune universe. Apparently, they're working closely with Legendary Entertainment, who will be releasing a new Dune movie as well. So, I don't know. We'll see what this means for the future of Funcom. Obviously, none of Funcom's current MMOs are like in the highlights. None of them are particularly doing well enough to be considered top 5, maybe top 10. But they have had some success, obviously, as a company. Lots of success as a company over the history, the long history of Funcom as a company. This is just interesting to think about because Funcom really has been around since the beginning, guys. Anarchy Online. I think that was 99 or 2000, 2001? Maybe 2001. So they've been around for ages. They're basically gaming royalty in the Nordic regions. And I think it's a bit interesting now to think about how they're going to be impacting and influencing things now that they are essentially owned by the Chinese company, Tencent. By the way, Dynamics, I saw that you subscribed. Welcome back to the Nor Club. That's 9 months in a row, I think. Yeah, subscribe for 9 months. There you go. So, welcome to the Nor Club. And thanks for your support. Yeah, the YouTube stream, man, that was the most people I've ever had watching me. But it's just like, I will say there's some cool things about YouTube. I like the quality of it, like especially the quality of the VOD is higher quality, and it uploads immediately to my channel, which is pretty badass. But at the same time, what I dislike about it is that the subscription services aren't really as fleshed out as Twitch, and so it's harder to monetize in that sense. but people do also donate to YouTube streams. So I don't know, I'm still figuring it all out, but ultimately I still think it's better for me to diversify myself and build a Twitch audience and a YouTube audience rather than just build a YouTube audience. Sounds like Tencent's going to do a hostile takeover. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I said. Like what I just said, Benato, is like my theory of what's going to happen is basically now that they're the largest shareholder, it's not out of the question for them to just pick up a couple more shares, and the next thing you know, they're the majority stake in the company, which is exactly what they are in companies like Epic Games and Riot. They're majority owners in those companies. Those are their games. Putting all eggs in the YouTube basket's a bad idea, seeing how YouTube's been, and that's exactly, Card. I've seen more and more changes recently, and they did go back on their changes with the whole check mark and verification process, but there are some things I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to. But yeah, that's what I've noticed as well. I agree. Binato said that Tencent is pretty hands-off in development. However, they're very hands-on for monetization. Largely seems to be what I've seen as well. Hey, what's up? I didn't know you were Leo, Kalantis. So you've been following me for a bit. I've seen you around. That's funny. Good to see you. Have you considered using Restream to dual stream to YouTube and Twitch? Unfortunately, you can't do it. Just because it's against the rules once you become an affiliate or a partner on Twitch. I'm only an affiliate, not a partner yet. But I still have, essentially, I'm not allowed to dual stream. Could I without getting caught? Possibly. Is it really worth it? Like, destroy my Twitch audience? Because, you know, like, probably not. So only the old guard of Twitch are allowed to dual stream. Yeah, I know. That's hey, if they let me, man, I would. Like, why wouldn't I? Basically, at that point, gonna have to call it the gentle passing of a game now if death gets you flagged on YouTube. Well, as long as they don't name it that when I launch the video or upload the video, I'll be okay. Alright, let's get into our second topic here. This one's actually kind of caught me off guard. I didn't expect to find this. But this is rumored, so please bear with me. But according to the rumors, this is the new mobile MMO. The new mobile Warhammer MMO. That has already been announced, by the way. We know that they were going to do an MMO, and we know it was going to be on mobile. This is all they're showing at the moment for Warhammer Odyssey. Just a walking simulator so far, basically. I mean, it's good. They're at least showing you, like, frame drops and work-in-progress footage, so it does look a lot more like actual gameplay. But, obviously, I'll reserve my thoughts until I actually see gameplay and most importantly, how the game's going to be structured from a business or monetization standpoint. But I don't know, that's kind of cool. It's like a witch hunter, right? Huh. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of scale. Actually, if we just use these as comparison, it's very likely that these are zones that you're loading into. But imagine if this was, like, seamless. I think if it was seamless, that'd be pretty impressive. But I think it's very likely that they're instances, just because it's on a phone. Alright, not much really to react about that. It's about all I got. That's all that's out right now. What are the top comments? Had me at Warhammer, lost me at mobile. Why not make an MMO for the PC? Mobile games are the death of a good franchise. Don't you guys have fun? Phones? Echoes in the wind. Walking animation online. Yeah, so at least the audience is a little more educated these days, because, man, I remember back in the day, you could launch a video like this and you'd had 17 billion people talking about how it's the next greatest thing since sliced bread. So at least it's not good in that we had to be, like, over and over again tortured with like disappointing games to become jaded. But at least now we're not like, wow, this is incredible, before we know really anything about it. Alright, so the announcement on the structure of the podcast and also just the future of the MMO roundtable I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think first off, last week's podcast is a really good watch for any of you who missed it. But it was the first time that I just decided to keep the roundtable on and just react to a couple of topics that we had on the docket, if you will. And I was thinking that I think ultimately the future of the podcast for me, I see it as like starting off with an introduction and maybe me getting any house cleaning out of the way or housekeeping out of the way. And then after that, basically bringing on whoever is interested in joining the roundtable for the week. And don't worry, there's going to be a process to be able to join the roundtable. You're not just going to be able to join it whenever you want. Even though we had that originally, we're going to have to change that because we're changing the format of the show and also the format of how things work. I don't want just random people to come in and then just like be able to derail things. So like we're going to have to control for quality a little bit. And we have changes that are coming in the form of Discord changes that are going to kind of just really revamp how we view a discussion, and in all in good ways. Like I don't want to really release too much now just because a lot of it's still being worked on, but basically we're trying to flesh out some more of the lore and the community aspects of the Discord. And then specifically with the podcast, the roundtable would bring on 3-4 people. We would go over particular MMO topics, whichever ones we would have, and then before the podcast would actually happen, you'd get that material beforehand. So that way you would know what topics are going to be discussed, at least ultimately. So like if you come onto the roundtable, we end up just ranting about PlanetSide like we've done before. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just more that we have some topics to go over in case we forget what we're talking about. Because we don't want 4 people on a podcast when we're all just like ranting back and forth. That happens in a lot of podcasts. Like I see that in a lot of like the more popular podcasts where they get more people on and it's just like crazy all over the place. It's not really like for me, like it's not really what I want. I still want us to be guided, focused somewhere, create good discussion, maybe even have some fun disagreements. But yeah, so there'll be more details about that next week, and I think we're shooting to have it done for next week. But long story short, you get to join on the round table. You get to be a part of the whole podcast, except at the very last part of the podcast where we do like questions from the audience. Those are directed at me. AMA questions are going to be directed at me. So we'll do pretty much all of the segments except like the beginning and the end segments with a group. And we'll see how that goes. We're basically learning as we go. I mean, so whatever we try, if it doesn't work, we can always just try something else. Ultimately, the focus is making it fun to watch, enjoyable to watch. And then also, if you don't get to watch it live that much, I think it makes it a lot more exciting to watch it after. If that makes sense, because just one person for discussion, if you're not talking to me live, I can understand that's not really that exciting because it's like nobody's really like feeding off of me. But having more people on, I noticed last week, it lowers a lot of the burden for me. It allows me to like multitask and actually like read chat and see and make sure I'm not making mistakes in the stream and stuff like that. It gives me more time to think of my thoughts and be a little bit more measured. Otherwise, I have to just fill the silence all the time because people listen to me on SoundCloud. And so imagine if I just pause for like a minute, which I'm okay with as a person. Like I can have long pauses in my speech normally. If you guys talk to me off camera or off a stream, I pause a lot usually. I just can't do it on YouTube because it doesn't make for the fastest, most cohesive videos. So we cut a lot of the pauses. But it also is even weirder on a podcast where you can't just like pause the whole time when you're like the only one talking, I understand that. I'm glad. Yeah, Fantasy Star, and honestly, topics about what genres mean, what a game means for the genre. There's so many juicy topics that we can have as a collective, which I think is just better for facilitating good discussion and also entertaining discussion. Because at the end of the day, I don't want the show to be everybody agrees with nerdSlayer. Or I don't want the show to be everybody just listens to nerdSlayer, right? Because that to me is not a show. That's just a stream, right? A stream is a cult of personality where it's just like, follow me, support me, support me. I think of it more as like, I want to create a discussion. True, I think my voice sounds better on YouTube, by the way. I wonder why. Yeah, I don't know why. So yeah, we'll talk more about it next week once we unveil everything. But in a nutshell, that's the changes that are coming. So nothing too drastic, don't worry. It's all going to be about improving the podcast. I mean, from now on, as you guys know, Card and I primarily have been the ones behind 6 Pixels Under. We recently acquired Gardener, who's been volunteering in between leveling and WoW, and he's been helping out as well. But primarily, you know, the podcast has been basically just us three. And since the beginning, it's just been Card and I. So Card has, I think, decided that he wants to step up and put some of his ideas into fruition. So I'm excited to see what we can cook up. Exactly. Pojit, exactly. It's supposed to be designed to where throughout the week you'll have notice of what we're going to talk about, and you'll also have the ability to talk about it beforehand. Once we actually have the discussion, it'll be like the point where people have kind of refined their discussions and come up with their like premises. And so it'll come off a lot more like I want to keep it from being like I invite 3 people on, which is what I'm currently doing. But I invite 3 people on. They maybe have thoughts about something, maybe don't. Maybe they're like, but maybe they don't really, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I want to prevent shit like that from happening where somebody comes on and they're just like, well, I don't have anything to say. And you're just like, then don't take the slot on the roundtable. You're not going to talk, you know, about whatever topics we're talking about, or you don't have something to talk about yourself. So just follow Discord. All of this will be explained. And I'm sure in a much better way than I'm explaining it now. Are you also under ArcheAge Unchained game library on Twitch? I am. Thank you for letting me know that. Also, what's up, Brawly? And who else did I miss? Carlo. What's up, Carlo? Yeah, 52 seems like a big number, man. That's 52 weeks. And I mean, we had some skips in between there, like maybe 3 or 4 skips. We did a good job of being pretty consistent. I think sometimes I can start a little bit later, but the only times I start later are basically when I've been playing MMOs the whole night the day before. Like one time we did a podcast, and I did it an hour later, and I literally had just woken up from playing WoW the previous day. So like, so it actually was originally on Spotify, but the problem is that ultimately, you know, I am kind of funding all of this shit on my own. You know, you guys essentially are my funding source. Without you guys, I wouldn't have any money. So whenever you guys give me money, basically, and I don't mean just through like donating, but like also following, watching my videos, all the different ways that you can earn me ad revenue. Like when you guys give me money, it gives me more basically opportunities to do more shit. But yeah, like Spotify, it's weird. You have to use another podcast hosting service, which also costs money on top of my SoundCloud. So it's like, I didn't see the point in like doing an iTunes, SoundCloud, and you know what I'm saying? So like I just ended up sticking with SoundCloud. I believe they still show me on iTunes as well, and a couple other Pocket Casts and different podcast services. But Stitcher was the one that I had to pay for, and I think there was one other one that I had to pay for. Just a lot of shit that they make you pay for in order to host your like podcast, you know? I guess that's like a big market right now, so I don't know. But it seems like there's like a lot of shit that you have to do. Getting published to Spotify should be free if you go with LiveSync. So if that's the one that I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure it wanted me to use the attachment from my Stitcher. And my Stitcher is the free version, so it wasn't like... Anyway, I'll have to look more into it, though. Oh, that's absolutely true, Card. Because I personally would prefer if I could have them on Spotify, just because Spotify recently has made a big push towards podcasts. I don't watch any podcasts on Spotify, like I'll just be straight up. I watch them all on YouTube just because I'm a YouTube guy, obviously, if you couldn't figure it out. But I have watched I have listened to a couple of podcasts on Spotify. I just don't listen to it regularly. So, I mean, I think that platform is big, and I would love that opportunity, like Card said, as things become more ironed out and we get our show figured out. Once we can reach an audience like Spotify, I don't know, maybe we'll get more MMO fans. That would be weird, right? People listening to me on Spotify without even knowing who I am, or without even knowing like what I'm going to talk about. They just see the name and they're just like, 6 Pixels Under, MMO discussions. What is this shit? And they click on it, next thing you know, like, they hear a bunch of people talking about this topic and going back and forth, and they're like, man, these guys are passionate. They care about this shit. That's what I'm saying, bro. I wonder, like, who would listen to an MMO podcast on Spotify? Like, I want to know what kind of person that person is. Because if that's the future, man, like podcasting is going to be pretty wild. You're going to have podcasts for like everything. Not that you don't already, but like you're going to have podcasts for like knitting and shit, you know? You could basically learn everything you want off of Spotify or YouTube. Yeah, I'm usually listening to on YouTube as well. If I had to describe why I prefer YouTube, what's up, Moonman, over Twitch, it's just like YouTube, I feel like the people on YouTube, the cool thing I like about it is that I can create evergreen content that's always relevant, and I can always have discussion being created. People are always talking about my old Death of a Game videos, and I still get to read those comments, so I like that I can kind of go back and see like what people are talking about. And then I also like that I can put my art up somewhere and be like, here it is, and watch it in its entirety, critique it in its entirety, and that's it. Versus like a stream, you know, a stream's a little bit more forgiving when you make mistakes because people know that I didn't script this or anything. Like I don't have 20 tries on my Audacity, you know, to fix my voiceover or whatever else. Twitch is more off the cuff, so it comes off as more personal to me in a way. Which I do like that about Twitch. I like that usually I can recognize a lot of your names. I know who you are. You keep the same names as your Discord usually, so like I can kind of recognize people from chat. Also, people show up all the time regularly on Twitch. It's a lot more of a regular audience than I think YouTube is. YouTube could be like somebody watches you and then maybe doesn't see you for another couple of months, you know? But on Twitch, it's like when people watch you on Twitch, they're watching you week after week, maybe even like couple days after couple days. Like, well, if you stream as infrequently as me, then maybe a couple of days, but you're at least seeing me weekly on a more personable sense. So I think they're both really cool, but they have different audiences and different focuses. I know that YouTube does have a streaming service. Obviously, I just streamed on it yesterday, but it's not really the same as Twitch, and it's also not the same community. So it's kind of like, could I convince my community who's used to watching like 40-minute fully produced videos to want to watch me just like fuck around in a video game or like talk shit? I probably can't convince all of them. Many of them work. Many of them can't show up at, you know, certain times to watch my stream. Many of them just don't have the time in the day to be able to watch a stream, period. So they just watch my video when they can. So, yeah. Just trying to be more accessible, I think, in all ways is the goal ultimately. Thank you, Rapture21, for your subscription, and welcome to the Noir Club. I actually, didn't even see that. Thanks for mentioning that, Card. But yeah, Rapture21 just subbed with his Twitch Prime. Here's your Fedora tip. That's like the Fedora slide into the tip, you know, like secret tipping. Actually, we should come up with like specific tips, like, what if instead of doing like this over and over again for 5 or like 10, what if we did like special tips? So like if someone donates 5 subs, you hit them with like the brim tip, or maybe you do the whole hat on off the face if it's like 20, you know? Got to use the prop more if I'm going to be wearing it. YouTube has a streaming service in the same way that Arby's competes with a high-end Brazilian. Yeah, basically. Don't fire me, Google, please. Please don't withhold my check. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, it's true. It's like technically it has a streaming service, but yesterday on the streaming service, you guys are gonna laugh, but I wasn't even streaming for like a solid, no joke, like 20 minutes. I was just talking to myself. Because you also have to do the whole stream, then press live again. You have to press the next live button. I didn't realize there was another live button. That's good that there's a live button so people don't accidentally start their streams, but I didn't know that. So I literally was talking to myself for like 20 minutes. I was like, man, the YouTube audience is like... I was like shit talking basically my own audience. Like, man, you guys are quiet today. Nobody's talking on YouTube. It was like Twitch is a lot more vocal. And then all of a sudden, dude, I go live and it just blows up. People are just chatting nonstop, and I was like, all right. It's a bit embarrassing. But hey, it happens. I follow you on YouTube. Always watch your stream there. Just a little tip for your work. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's all I'm asking for, right? You guys have it. You have a tip. Want to give it. I'm willing to accept. It was a crazy chat, honestly. It was really crazy. Like, I went back and read some of the chat, and I missed so much shit. I actually covered a lot of it already. I just covered it, like, later in the same cast, I guess. But it was just things like I did a whole review of the cash shop in that 20 minutes. So that's hilarious, dude. That's like honestly hilarious. I was warming up, I guess, the whole time. Alright, so let me switch the title over now to MMOs on the go. Let's just talk about strictly MMO things. The first topic that we're going to go over is there is a recent article that came out. Amazon says it's still working hard on its MMO RPG New World. A lot of people have been asking me about New World. If you don't know the story of New World or my story with New World was a teased game by Amazon Game Studios a couple years back, was held mostly under lock and key. They made a big announcement, invited a bunch of content creators, mainly YouTube guys like me, XP gamers. Who else did they invite? Oh, they invited a bunch of survival games guys too. Like they invited I think there was maybe one other MMO person I'm missing, but anyway. They invited a couple of people to actually go to their studio in California. I got to go. I had to sign an NDA, which means that I can't really talk about what was said in certain closed doors about the game, and I also can't talk about my specific opinion about the game, really, until the NDA goes away. What I can talk about is New World. Obviously, if you guys have been following the news about New World, it was making a lot of headway. It's using the Lumberyard engine, which is the Amazon engine, and of course it's backed by Amazon. New World closest resembles a more expanded version of a sandbox survival game. Like, it's more of an MMO version of that, right? And I can say that because that's been publicly released already. But that being said, all of a sudden they had this period of time where they shut down the servers and said that big changes are coming to the game. And that was followed up immediately after with an announcement that they would be developing the free-to-play Lord of the Rings MMO. So Amazon revealed that development is being led by the same Amazon Game Studios behind New World, but a new team is being assembled for that project and will utilize the resources from their other offices in Seattle, Irvine, and San Diego. What else does it say here? Yeah, so it says since the announcement of Lord of the Rings, Amazon Game Studios' social media has been pretty quiet, and so has New World. So they say right now, don't worry, we're working on upgrading our forums. Everything is going great. No crazy alarms are being raised right now. They even said that just recently, a couple of months back, 2 months back, Amazon reiterated that development was continuing with weirdly contradictory messaging stating that the studio liked what it saw in the alpha, but still needed to close down this phase of the alpha to integrate the content and features that the testers were asking for. Now, I wish I could comment on that because I know a lot about it, but I can't really, right? All I can say is that my theory about all of this is that right now, Amazon Game Studios, headed by none other than Mr. Smedley himself, by the way, if you guys forgot. Do some research if you don't know who Smedley is. Done enough Smedley talks, I feel like. With Smedley in charge of the Amazon Game Studios, which now is, trying to pump out MMOs, I'm wondering, do they even have the resources to do New World and Lord of the Rings at the same time? Now, many of you are probably asking, Amazon having the resources? Are you kidding me? Well, doing 2 major AAA MMOs is pretty fucking difficult. And if you're gonna ask me, let's say I'm putting on my Amazon hat right now, My curly hair covering my face. If I put on my Amazon hat right now, and you ask me, if you had to divert resources from New World to focus on Lord of the Rings, would you do it? Or would you try and develop them both simultaneously using, you know, similar teams or resources, like pooled resources? Or would you just pass up the opportunity to do a Lord of the Rings MMO? There is no way in fucking hell I would ever give up the Lord of the Rings IP. There's no way I would ever do that. As a staunch Lord of the Rings fanboy, I could not ever give up the Lord of the Rings IP personally. But even from a business perspective, if I'm Amazon, I'm big business. Guys, they're putting out a TV show. A giant TV show that has like a budget of like $1 billion or something, right? Like, you don't think they're gonna go all in on Lord of the Rings? Like, I guess I'm just surprised that, I don't know, I feel like people are maybe not seeing that, you know? That if they simultaneously develop both of these MMOs, the Lord of the Rings free-to-play MMO and New World, both will be inferior products than if they just focused on one of them. I think that's pretty fair to say, considering they themselves literally admit here in the article, check this out. It literally says in the article that they're going to be using, it's like contradictory what they're saying, but this is a quotation. It says development is being led by the Amazon Game Studios, the same Amazon Game Studios team behind New World. And a new team being assembled for this project will utilize resources from across AGS locations in Seattle, Irvine, which is where I visited, and then San Diego. So I think San Diego is maybe their main office, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, where is their main? Where is Smedley at? Who the fuck is Smedley Butter? AGS. Come on. Amazon Game Studios. It's so hard to find information about them for some reason. Let's see. Let's click on his wiki page. Do some digging. Alright. He is currently the general manager of Amazon Game Studios San Diego. So yeah, San Diego is their headquarters. I just wanted to make sure I was saying that right. What else do we have here? Any other little bits of clues, maybe? An official account said that, don't worry, we are just upgrading our forums. Everything is going great. Oh, man. Sorry, I don't believe you guys yet. Until y'all show me something otherwise. I'm wondering why you guys are keeping it under such lock and key. And then at the same time, how come no more announcements have been made since they've made these announcements, essentially? That tells me that there's a lot of cogs moving, a lot of moving pieces. And once again, I just don't understand from a game developer's perspective, business perspective, or a publisher's perspective, why they would divert resources to work on two simultaneous MMOs. I just don't know why they would do that. Companies have done this before, but they've never done it like right at the same time. You know, right around the same time. Because you might be asking, yeah, but in the case of New World, it's been in development for some time now, so it's not like they're just starting development. You're right. And yet they kind of are, right? Isn't that what they're saying? They're like, oh, we're happy with it, but we're going to redo it. And we're like, are you guys really going to put the time in to redo New World when you have Lord of the Rings on the docket? I don't know, man. I just find that hard to believe. Well, yeah, actually, Angel Spit, there's been multiple companies that have had multiple MMOs being developed around the same time. In fact, Tryon Worlds was a big example of that. But in Tryon's case, not all of the games started being developed or started being worked on around the same time is what I'm saying. So, like, that is even harder to do. What I'm trying to imply, Coluntus, is that I think that they're going to abandon New World and focus on focus on Lord of the Rings. That's what I would do. But, no. Again, That's me putting on my Amazon business hat and being like, that's what I would do. If I put on my fanboy hat, I feel the same way. If I put on my, I don't know, consumer player hat, I don't know enough about either of the games yet to make that statement obvious. Tryon also took a lot of development shortcuts. That's true. And I'm pretty sure they utilize the same engine too. So it's much easier to develop multiple MMOs if you're using the same engine. In fact, that's exactly what Cryptic Studios did. Cryptic Studios used the same engine for Neverwinter, used the same engine for Star Trek, and used the same engine for, there's one other game they used it for. A big one. I can't remember off the top of my head. They could just reskin New World to go with Lord of the Rings. I mean, people have been saying that. I think that's a fair opinion, right? Lord of the Rings, a New World. I think New World is going to be the framework that they can sell off to other developers, similar to Unity engine stores. So you're saying that's going to be how they sell the Lumberyard engine? Because the majority of times, I can say this legally, and, you know, I made sure, but I can say this legally. I know that the majority of time spent developing New World hasn't been spent developing New World. It's been spent developing their engine, Lumberyard, which is also currently being used for Star Citizen, by the way. But the majority of the time that they spent on New World, I was told directly by a developer, was primarily spent on developing the engine. For people who know how development works and know that either you get a pre-existing engine or you make your own, they made their own, so obviously it was going to take them a long time to do that. It just doesn't make sense to compete with yourself in a saturated market. Let's not pretend retail WoW and Classic alone don't count as market saturation for MMOs for at least the next year or two. Lumberyard with the New World engine could cause a mass resurgence in the MMO market. New World does use the Lumberyard engine, though. And I'm going to tell you guys something. Don't always trust the marketing. That's all I'll say. I'm getting far away from that discussion. Alright, let's react to a couple other topics here. Card said, Star Citizen only uses some of the core bits of Lumberyard. Most of their stuff is their own work, though. Which has never made sense to me why Amazon and CIG would not work closer together on this one, as it feels they are both building the same wheels in a way. I feel the same way, actually. And I didn't get the chance to ask them that, the developers, because obviously they were developers of New World, not like Lumberyard developers. But I don't know, that's probably one of the bigger regrets, is maybe I should have tried to find somebody to ask about that. That's an interesting question. I didn't think about that. Developing two projects does not take away much resources if we're talking about a single player, at least. Yeah, but we're not talking about single players. We're talking about MMOs. What do you think about the Lumberyard engine? It's unproven. That's what I think. And until it's proven, then, you know, we'll see. CryEngine. Lumberyard is the CryEngine 3 brought, or I think he meant bought by Amazon. I don't know if it's the same, though, because it's, again, I just can't talk about it anymore, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sure soon enough, I will be able to talk about it. It is modified. Yeah, I can say that. I mean, I think that's pretty public. Oh, Card said, well, it used to be, but now they've made the changes by now. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you said they built it as a framework, but it doesn't mean that it has close resemblance to it. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Because doesn't ArcheAge use the CryEngine? Right? I'm pretty sure. What does ArcheAge use? Is it okay? CryEngine 3. Yeah, because man, the ArcheAge engine does not feel like New World. Like, the engines just feel so different from each other. But again, you could just chalk that up to the game being different. Different games. I don't know. But that's all I'm going to say about that shit. That's true. You do, Brawley. I remember that now. That's probably why I remembered CryEngine. Alright, so I wanted to react to some good old-fashioned quality threads on the MMORPG subreddit. The success of WoW Classic is a good omen for Pantheon and the future titles looking to revert back to a more old-school design. I've long felt that MMOs have become too streamlined. Okay? Old-school MMOs fostered a more interdependent community. Right? Games like EQ and to a slighter lesser extent, Classic WoW were difficult and often frustrating, if only played by yourself. Only if you're talking about group-based content. In EverQuest, hilariously, and in Classic WoW, hilariously, there are two classes in particular that actually can solo pretty damn well. But I think he means like also group content. I'm only saying that because oftentimes people just misremember shit or didn't play Classic WoW or like EverQuest, but they'll say like, oh, it's like you can't do anything solo in those games. It's like, yeah, you can. Like there's classes that are amazing solo in those games. It's just not everybody can do it solo, you know? Alright, it says if you encourage you to get out there and team up with other players. Alright, fair enough. Nothing I'm seeing is too egregious here. Many feel that old school MMOs were too grindy, and I can respect that. Hey, I'm glad that he's not just talking about nostalgia being, you know, rose-tinted glasses here, right? Alright, let me get to the crux of his point here. There's nothing wrong with enjoying modern MMO design. It's not MMO design, though. This is something that I want to be eradicated from people's, like, vocabulary. Stop saying modern MMOs. Because if it doesn't fit the definition of MMO, adding modern to it doesn't change that. You know? Like, people think by saying modern first, it changes the definition of MMO, but it shouldn't. Like, modern shooters don't change the definition of what a shooter is either. They're just different games. With, like, different philosophies, maybe, in certain ways. Huh. I thought he was actually going to explain the premise for why he thinks Pantheon would be a good game, or is a good omen. This is the kind of stuff that I know a lot of this is wishful thinking from people, and they're just putting their thoughts out there, their beliefs, maybe even their feelings. But the reason why I even am reacting to this is because the title I saw is a good omen for Pantheon and future titles looking to revert back to a more old school design. And what I want to understand here is, or what I want to talk about here is something that I've mentioned in my Kickstarter video that talks about Pantheon. I want to make this abundantly clear for everybody. I very much enjoy the class archetypical experience that you get in EverQuest, WoW Classic, and in games like Pantheon. I love the focus on group content, raid content, and PvE content in general. Where I'm worried about with Pantheon is I think that people think just because it has aspects that are similar to EverQuest or WoW Classic, and those were good back then, that it's going to be good in current day and age. And I think that you just, like, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of how the market works, right? Things do evolve, and if Pantheon doesn't seem like an evolved version of WoW, people won't play it. Even though WoW is 15 years old, right? They still won't play Pantheon if they think WoW does a better job at doing that. And so, like, Pantheon, just because it's doing what WoW and EverQuest did, doesn't mean it's going to do a good job at it, is what I'm trying to say. So don't just think because this is similar to this, they're both going to be the same. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Like, we don't even know how Pantheon is going to be yet, really. They haven't even showed us enough footage of the game to know for sure how the game's going to play, if it's going to have longevity, if it's going to be able to survive. We've gotten none of these. And, like, frankly speaking, Pantheon's one of the ones right now that probably has me the most annoyed when people bring it up, between that one and, like, Ashes of Creation. Because it's just, like, I feel like people talk about it, but they're not actually, like, looking at the scenario in front of you. And the problem with Pantheon is that it's not that that kind of game doesn't work, period. Because obviously it has worked before. But just because it's worked before doesn't mean it's going to work when Pantheon does it. And not to mention, if you remember, the budgets and sizes of games like EverQuest and WoW Classic dwarf the size of a budget like Pantheon. Are you kidding me? Look at how much money Pantheon has raised right now, right? I'm going through this shit with you guys because I want you guys to be able to hold these developers accountable, but also know what to look for yourself, right? And maybe even understand some of my opinions. But, like, right now, the game isn't playable. The closest way you can play the game, as far as I remember, and I did this already on my other video, but you have to pay a certain amount of money to get the alpha access or whatever you need, right? Now, if I try and figure out how much money Pantheon has raised, this is how difficult it is. All right, pledge. All right, so pledge talks about how much the pledges are. All right, so I know that. But how much money have they put into the game? How much is funded so far? How come I don't see that anywhere? It's not on the store page, is it? Nope. Products are on the store page. It's not on the pledge page. It's not on the front page, right? So my question to you guys, now that I've showed you this, is how could you, in good conscience, know that this game has even funded what they're trying to accomplish? You can't. In fact, a certain YouTuber made a video about this. Let's hear what his thoughts were about Pantheon, right? That being said, they certainly have enough funding to be considered a serious timestamps below. All right. Are they fulfilling their promises? Pantheon. Next on the report card is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is a subscription-based MMO. The MMO put forth by the studio Visionary Realms and CEO Chris Rowan, CCO Brad McQuaid of the legendary EverQuest and Vanguard Saga of Heroes fame. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is a call to the old EverQuest focus on world and community involvement. Pantheon's crowning feature is a polished and updated old-school MMO formula, one where your role is very unique and you need to meet people and form guilds or groups, and finally, a focus on PvE dungeons and raid content as an adventure party of sorts. The Kickstarter for the project launched in January of 2013, and the game has been in pre-alpha since 2017. Did they meet their promised launch? Visionary Realms had promised at PAX East 2018 that Pantheon would be in alpha by the end of the year. Later that year, they walked back that statement, stating I'll skip ahead to where they talk about how much money. The game is not completely funded, as is in various levels of testing. They've completed their Series A of funding, which... Alright, so this is the most important part, and what I want you guys to leave here with when it comes to a game like Pantheon. I'm not trying to say, don't trust Pantheon. It sucks. It's never going to work. That's not how I talk. I mean, so at this point, you guys know that. But what I'm trying to say is that Series A funding, as they say in the article, allows the company to expand the team in almost every department and bring the game into a semi-private pre-alpha state where external testers and focus groups can begin sampling the game. Pre-alpha, semi-private pre-alpha state is what Series A funding has granted them. So they've completed their Series A funding. I have seen, so far, no admitting that they've completed their Series B funding. And here's why I'm so worried about that. The chairman says, Christopher Rowan says, as we start to raise support for Series B, we are in a position now to empower our departments in the many resources they need. Okay? So what is Series B, apparently means right? It allows the company to expand the team in almost every department and bring the game into a semi-private pre-alpha state where external testers and focus groups can begin sampling the game. So technically the game is not completely funded as... Okay, so it doesn't say there for some reason. I don't know why I didn't put that part in my video. That's kind of weird. Did I leave all my links in here? Pantheon, what would it be? It'd be Series B funding. I need to find my article. I don't think these are... No, that's not. I need Pantheon, the MMO. That whatever Pantheon that was making a lot of money. that was pretty crazy. Alright, so check this out. I don't know why I didn't show it in the article, but it says it if you scroll down, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. No, it's not on this one. Alright, so here he goes. Attempts to define the meaning of Series A and B. I know what the answer is, guys, but I just wanted to show you guys the actual answer. The answer is actually Series B in this particular case. Basically just means that that's the majority of the game development. So the majority of the game development process finishing out the game, going into like an actual working beta state, is Series B funding. So Series A, they've cleared already, right? They've got enough people to work on the game, is what they've said. But they've never yet admitted that they've passed Series B, which means they basically don't even know if they can even fund their game, period. Let me say that again. They don't even know if they can fund their game, period, yet. And I get it, man. Like, it's so hard because I love MMOs as well. And I want a game like Pantheon to work and succeed. But how is a game that's so reliant on developers creating the content for you going to function when they don't have enough money to even make the game, period? Let alone make more content. I don't know. That's my thoughts on Pantheon, I guess. That's why, and like, speaking of like other projects where people are just willingly giving their money away for the promise of basically nothing, let's talk about Project C. So I don't know who Project C is, nor do I really care. Any company for me that comes out, promises a bunch of shit, and then says, hey, can you apply right now and buy our Explorer, Founder, Visionary, whatever the hell packs, so you can get access to our closed alpha. And I'm just like, at this point, you have to ask yourself. This is something that was linked to me, Limpos. I don't know anything about it, nor am I going to provide any details about it because I don't want to give them advertisement. But it was some recent crowdfunded MMO or attempt at a crowdfunded MMO that was launched, and they're trying to get funds and raise funds for it. I totally understand that. Guys, I wax poetic about the crowdfunding industry all the time. I'm happy with it. In the indie RPG market, MMOs, like in indie markets, MMOs in the Kickstarter market, as I mentioned in my Kickstarter video, haven't really like wowed us yet. They haven't even impressed anybody, really. Like, there's no MMO that's come out on Kickstarter yet that's like the next big thing, right? I'm not trying to say that that means that it's screwed, it's never going to work, right? But it's just not there yet. So like, I just think it's important that if you're going to be supporting these MMOs on Kickstarter and crowdfunded sources, make sure you can hold them accountable. Make sure you're willing to lose your money, right? You're willing to lose your money. That's the important part. And then C, don't let them ask for money before they've actually like worked on anything in particular. Because like, at this point, are we as fans and players just going to bankroll everybody, right? I mean that seriously. Like, are we just going to crowdfund everyone? Or is crowdfunding only reserved for the developers who want to go through building that relationship with their crowd? Or the developers who want to bring forth an idea that isn't mainstream appeal, right? That's what I thought crowdfunding was for. It's for getting the little man the resources they need so they can pay for what they need to pay for. And I don't know, just shit like this Project C thing just annoys me. I don't know any details about your game and you already want me to pre-order it to get into alpha? Like, how about just focus on working on your game first, right? And I'm not going to say you need to wait until after your game's done to monetize, obviously. But definitely don't monetize it before you even have a game. So there was some super data that came out. And super data, you know, take with it what you will. It's not 100% accurate, but no MMO population data really is at this point, if you guys have figured that out. Super data, August 2019. WoW Classic drives a massive subscription surge. Let's see what they've got. At the moment right now, top grossing titles. It looks like the Western version of WoW, which means not the Eastern version, I guess, is top 3 right now. Up there with Dungeon Fighter Online and League of Legends. That's pretty impressive. That's good news for the world of MMOs, but also the good news for WoW fans and, I guess, Blizzard fans. So, do we know that these numbers are 100% accurate? We don't, unfortunately. We do know that the Pokemon Go numbers are accurate because those were released by Niantic themselves. So Pokemon Go is dominating mobile right now. That's true. Console is being dominated by Fortnite. Nothing new there. Dungeon Fighter Online probably has a bunch of people scratching their head, but it's like the single most popular game, I think, in the Asia region. Period. And then I think, MMO-wise. And then there's League of Legends. That doesn't need an explanation. World of Warcraft. Well, yeah, exactly. What's Dungeon Fighter Online? I would go look it up, guys, because it's one of the most like forgotten and yet populated games You know, it's like so weird. Like Americans and Westerners, really, just in general, don't know what Dungeon Fighter is. I barely know what it is, right? I only know this shit because I cover it, but like, not a lot of people will know what it is. But it's like I think it's like a side-scrolling kind of beat 'em up style of game. It did have a, I don't want to say it's like a sequel, but it had sort of a sequel, I think. It's a beat 'em up MMO, yeah, basically, in a nutshell. I played DFO at launch for a week and I didn't like it. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's a good game or not, but clearly it's like ridiculously popular, which means something. So this is good to see, just overall. Nothing obviously more to really take from this. Just this doesn't surprise me or shouldn't surprise anybody else. If you're surprised that WoW is doing this well right now, you are delusional. Like, let me say that again, big screen. If you didn't think WoW was going to do this well, you are literally delusional, all right? Because nobody was questioning whether or not WoW would do well. We were questioning how well would they do and for how long would they do well, right? That was the actual discussion. It was never that they wouldn't do well. At least I hope none of you actually thought that that was like a serious argument. Because I saw it come up all the time, but it's like, it was never really a serious argument. Nobody was afraid that the game wasn't going to do well at launch. I wasn't the least bit afraid. So we'll see what that means for the market going forward, but anytime I can see an MMO in the top 10, I mean, that's good for me. We'll see how these numbers look, though, by the end of the year. Like, if we could get these numbers again, like, winter, maybe December, it'd be nice to see by then how much they've fallen from their top 3 spot on PC. Especially because now you're going to start to see people's subscriptions lapse. More people, I should say, will lapse their subscriptions, which is nothing new. I'm not trying to make some big statement, but pretty normal. Most games bleed out players, especially MMOs. Yeah, pin 0, that's kind of what I thought most people's criticism or most people's like points were ultimately were surrounding, like after a few months after launch, not just like launch itself. Because I've seen articles, like actual articles, journalists and media sites are putting out where they're like, oh my god, WoW is so successful, isn't that crazy? It's like, no, it's not. It's not. And I only say that, and I know it sounds a little bit gatekeepery, but hear me out here. One annoying thing I've always had with like the mass media or even just games journalism in general is they don't know shit about MMOs, and yet they will always talk about MMOs. Because they're big stories. MMOs are big stories. It's big news. But it's just like, I mean, it's sad even when like MMO dedicated websites do poor jobs at talking about MMOs. I just think that that's because MMOs in general are just, there's so much moving pieces. But at the same time, I think it ultimately comes down to come back to WoW in a year has always been my criticism. Half my friends on the servers, like Elysium, only lasted until they got bored of the same weekly rates. Yeah, so that's actually sorry, you guys know I derail myself, but sometimes that's the downsides of reading chat. I want to react to what Caliber 24P said though. That's actually how I feel personally. Like, if you guys haven't heard what my opinion is on Classic WoW already, as somebody who's playing it and will be playing it and doing a review on it, I don't see a place for me to keep playing the game after the end of the year. Like, if after Phase 2 comes out, which has got Honor, more raids, and the new raid content is slowly trickled out, I guess what I'm trying to say is what's going to keep me from logging in daily? Or sorry, what's going to keep me logging in daily to play the game? What kind of longevity is promised yet? Well, BlizzCon's coming, and they've made no major announcements about the future of Classic WoW yet, of course. We have no major announcements about just about anything major in regards to WoW or its future. Classic Plus, TBC, we don't really know what the future is, and that's my biggest problem with WoW Classic right now, is if they think that they can just breadcrumb everybody and that's going to work, hey, if you guys love Blizzard, go ahead and do that. I won't do that. I'm not interested in that. And what I mean by breadcrumb, I mean they're gonna like delay when they make an update. They're gonna finally say what they want to do and make an announcement for another announcement, and then they're gonna say, "Oh, Phase 2's out, guys," and then slowly trickle out the other phases, and then be like, "Oh yeah, maybe we should do Classic Plus," and then make an announcement. Then, like, if that's what they do, If that's what they do, I'm not going to be following it until they make that announcement of the Classic Plus or the future of what WoW Classic will be. Until they make an announcement about what the future of WoW Classic will be, right now my current stance is I'm going to keep playing the game up until I'm bored of it. Which I think, as many people are saying and probably know with WoW, is basically after I'm done with the raids. So, thanks for the warning, by the way. Oh, God. Well, I'm glad that you caught that card, or somebody else caught that, and not everybody did. That's what I get for not clearing my browse history. I don't want you guys looking at my porn, alright? Damn it. You're gonna get me banned. Where are we going? That was you, Calentus. I guess that's just my problem right now. Like, I don't appreciate Blizzard treating us like treating us like we don't have stake in this whole thing. They're kind of keeping it quiet on purpose because they don't know what to do. And somebody in chat said it, they're being reactionary, and I think that's exactly what Blizzard is doing. And that's exactly why I don't like what they're doing. I didn't like that they did that with launches. And they did this whole like silly ass idea of like trying to judge popularity based on name reservations. Like, what is this, 2001? Like, we're still doing that shit. I just feel like a lot of shit in that regard, especially with Blizzard, is behind, man. It's just behind, dude. Blizzard's plans with WoW Classic is relatively easy. Convert as much Classic players into BFA retail players as possible. If that's their idea, it sounds like one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard, honestly. Because I'm never going to play like current WoW. Like, I will never play retail WoW again. I see no reason at all. They would literally have to redo the entire game for me to want to play it. So, I don't think that's what they would be trying to do. I think that goes against what they're trying to do, which is actually, like, have longevity. And so, where I'm struggling, and as you guys can see, I'm struggling with, like, at what point is Blizzard going to make an announcement? Because at this point, I say, in my opinion, and feel free to disagree with me, as soon as we purchased WoW Classic as a product, we deserve to know where they were going with it. Instead, we got a bunch of, well, maybe, maybe do TBC server, Classic Plus is possible, maybe we'll do these other things. It's like, now we're like 2 months in, there's supposedly a big announcement coming at BlizzCon, and I'm starting to wonder if it's not going to be a Classic Plus or a TBC server announced, and it's just going to be an announcement for an announcement, and they're still just going to wait to see how popularity hits and how their recent, or it's rumored, but there's a rumored level squish in BFA. Maybe they're trying to see how that works out as well. I don't know, but it's a lot of wait and see from Blizzard, and I feel like that's going to get them in a lot of trouble with their fan base. It's going to be a mobile port. What is Classic Plus? Classic Plus is the idea of them taking Classic WoW and continuing to provide new content for that version of the game. So it's, think of it as like, either they would pivot off of retail WoW and give up on retail WoW, or they would like divert some of their resources, or maybe create some other team for it, perhaps. That's what people mean by Classic Plus, basically. The basic framework from Classic WoW, but like newer content. If Classic Plus is not what they're going to do, I'll have no interest in Classic in the future. At this point, I think I would do a TBC server, just because I wouldn't have to level up my character again, most likely. And so it's not that hard to just do the 10 levels, then the raid content, per se. So I would do that just to experience it. But if you're asking, like, how long would I keep playing the game? As long as it would take me to do that, basically. So if they want to do exactly what they're doing now, which is trickle that content out, we're talking like 2-3 years before Classic Plus could be a thing, potentially. If they want to just do Classic server, TBC server, and then see where it goes from there. But I think it's very likely they will at least be open to the idea of Classic Plus. And I guess this announcement at BlizzCon will let us know what they have in store. What else would they do? The ArcheAge method of fresh servers. Slowly keep rolling current Classic up to TBC, Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know if that's what they would do, but that's kind of what people have been saying or suggesting. I imagine they would be like, okay, we made a new developer team for Classic. They release TBC and then go a total different direction story-wise and feature-wise. Yeah, I think that could be possible. Then people will say, why not just do TBC, right? And so there is like some genuinely hard questions here. I'm not trying to say that, Blizzard, it's so easy, pick the one option. Like, I know it's a lot more complicated than just being like, we'll just do this. What I'm complaining about is their lack of communication, and I'm telling you guys, they will continue to lack communication on this particular subject. You can keep pressing them, you can keep adding them on Twitter. They're going to dodge most of your questions until they're ready to actually make an announcement. And we'll see what that announcement is, because I think that announcement will basically, for players like me, who don't want to just play a classic game forever, like, I'm sorry, but that's just not fun for me. I can go play Star Wars Galaxy's emulator if I wanted to do that. Again, you know? I could go play Star Wars Galaxy's Legends if I wanted to play a previous server of something. I could go play City of Heroes Homecoming. Like, I don't just want to play the old MMOs forever. Like, I only want to play the old MMOs if it means that we can create new MMOs like those MMOs, or in the case of WoW, if it means that could actually become something else. Like, more content could be created out of that, you know? If it's just like, no, it's just classic WoW and, hey, that's it. The game is literally designed to reach an endpoint. So theme park MMOs, my biggest problem with them, and why I'm making this point really, like in a nutshell, is that once the content is over, what the fuck is there to do in the game? You have like barely any tools to do anything. So it's like, after I hit max level and I do my raids and WoW, what do I do besides just wait for more raids or wait for them to actually make an announcement? That's kind of what I'm thinking a lot of players are going to end up doing, honestly, unless they do make an announcement. So we'll see. Maybe they won't be afraid if the numbers drop a little bit. But maybe if the numbers drop a little bit, they'll just take that as like, well, maybe we shouldn't do Classic Plus. I don't know, man. There's a lot of shit that goes into it, right? Do you trust that they would be able to do new content without the wide-reaching audience style rather than hitting the niche? I don't think they need to focus on being niche. I think WoW already is plenty not niche, you know? The game is massively popular. So I think that they don't need to worry about making it niche or anything per se, or worry about even necessarily making it massively popular. I think they can just basically take what they're currently doing, just improve upon it. And, you know, if you asked me what I would want to do, I think Kalantas just asked what I would like to do personally. Me, I would just make another MMO. But I think you guys kind of know my opinion about that already. Is like, I don't think MMOs are supposed to last for a long period of time. Technologically speaking, they aren't, at least. Now, this is more so the case in the past than in the future, because tech has kind of slowed down a little bit compared to how it was back then. But I'm almost just beginning to think that it's just better off, instead of repeatedly putting out expansions, to just do like 5-6 year, if your game can survive for 5-6 years and thrive, then make another one. Or World of Warcraft 2, and then just keep redoing that every 5-10 years. I honestly think that that's a better model than just trying to keep the same exact game alive for like 15 years. You know, it's like, I just, from a technical standpoint, at least so far with where we're at, I just don't really think that's like feasible. I mean, how many MMOs have tried and failed to stand the test of time? Maybe they weren't supposed to stand the test of time. Maybe they were supposed to pivot to something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I'm trying to say is like the first Mech Warrior game. Did they just say, all right, that's it, we did a Mech Warrior game? No, they kept making Mech Warrior games because it works, right? Obviously, multiplayer games are different. They're more complicated, and when you go to the massive multiplayer, it gets even more complicated. But still, same idea, I think, maybe applies. I was under the impression that Titan was a StarCraft MMO. Huh. I don't think it was a StarCraft MMO. I thought it was what Overwatch became. It was like something before Overwatch. Curious why they didn't make WoW 2 earlier. They were going to have Project Titan MMO in 2016, but it became Overwatch. Right? Okay. A lot of Blizzard projects got screwed up during the merger. That's true. But then you do a poor job at the live service game and with the resources available. I'm sorry, what do you mean, Tony the Toad? Are you saying, like, if the live service of the game sucks, then why are we going to trust them to do well on the classic version? Or are you saying that if they focus on the classic version, then the live version won't do well? Because the live version is already not doing well. In fact, it's doing the worst it's been doing in a long time, so. If MMO's not due to last long with all the resources needed and other things, would you even make an MMO with all that risk, though? I mean, I would. Like, are you asking the MMO guy if he would make an MMO? I think you mean, like, business-wise. If I was trying to make a lot of money, no, but you shouldn't get into game development because you just want to make a lot of money. That's just my opinion, you know? You can make a lot of money by making great games as well. So if you just focus on making a good game first, that good game can make a lot of money. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, though, that a good game can't also not make a lot of money. In fact, most MMOs that have failed don't fail because they're bad games. They fail because of other reasons. Overwatch was a byproduct of Project Titan. So what I'm talking about with the... to talk more about the sequel thing, because I didn't really explain it. The reason why I think sequels are more appealing is think about it in this way. WoW was a perfect example of this. Throughout the process of WoW, as it got bigger and bigger, their team grew to skyscraper levels of height. So let's say now my dev team's 300 people or whatever. If I want to keep making the same game, I'm going to ask you guys a simple question. Am I allowed to keep making the same content I was already making and making the same money I was making before I hired all of those people? Obviously, the answer is no, right? I have a lot more overhead and costs now. So when I'm talking about the sequel MMO idea, it also appeals to that. Instead of scaling up your team to some ridiculous size and then having to continue to create expansions for a game that's essentially outdated, why not just focus on making a newer game and making that profitable versus repeatedly putting millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars into doing new expansions and new cinematics and new advertisements just for it not to really pay off that much? That's what I'm trying to say. Currently, right now, in WoW, BFA has not been a good expansion for them, and it's not looking quite well for them. So, maybe they didn't need to do it before, so they just kept milking the same game. But now that they've been milking the same game, they've effectively reached it to its ultimate point where I don't know if there's a backwards point. You know what I'm saying? They'd have to make serious decisions to go backwards in order to undo a lot of what they've already done. Versus if they just had that success and made another game, you know? Again, I'm not trying to say it's just as easy as making another MMO. I'm not even saying make another completely unique MMO. I'm saying actually take the same framework, take the same engine, and just upgrade that, right? And by the way, this has been done before. Asheron's Call tried to do it, failed epically, unfortunately, because their second game was too good looking for the time and had a lot of issues. It also lacked the world of the first game. So you don't want to make your second game worse. EverQuest did the same thing, by the way. So other game developers have had my idea. So I'm not the first person to think of this idea. It's just that in their executions, they all kind of fucked up when they did it. So I guess I'm still convinced it could work. Just not in the way that EverQuest 2 or Asheron's Call 2 worked. There is a game like that, Warframe. It now updates its render engine and implements whole new systems. There you go. That's kind of what I'm talking about, man. That's funny that it does that. Funny in an interesting way. Sometimes I say funny when I mean interesting. I don't mean ha 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 funny. Why is he wearing a hat? Podcast time means it's fedora time. MMO sequel problem. It is impossible to issue anything but a downgrade in content scope because you're competing with years of content updates. You cannot rival that out of the gate in a new game. I think that that's a good opinion, but I don't know if it's necessarily 100% true. So maybe put a bow in that. We can use that as another topic to discuss sometime. Because Rob Pardo, a lead developer at WoW, is the person who's made that point specifically. He made the point that you can't just come out today and compete with like an older version that's had a longer tenure. But hilariously, 1 or 2 years after Rob Pardo made that statement, WoW Classic came out and did exactly what he said wasn't possible. So remember, Rob Pardo, one of the lead developers on WoW, originally said you could not come out with a new product and compete with WoW because it has all of these other years of expansion and new updates. And yet, WoW Classic came out and did literally exactly that. People have been posting it all over my videos, so I know some of y'all have already noticed it. WoW Classic is an exception because it's a nostalgia trip. People had lost legal access to a game they loved and grew up on, but I never played WoW Classic, so why am I interested in it? Out of curiosity. Do you think I have nostalgia for WoW? What if I told you guys WoW was actually the MMO that I hate the most? Would you believe me? Or would you just not believe me because I don't say that enough? Sometimes when I talk to you guys, I'm not just telling you my opinion. I'm also talking about the way the market works. But if you want to know my opinion, I don't really think WoW is that great of a game. Right? I thought WoW back then was actually highly overrated. I think it's been bad for a minute. That's just my personal opinion. But I can still have fun playing the game. And I can still have fun playing Classic WoW. And as somebody who never played Classic WoW, and didn't even want to play Classic WoW. In fact, I quit the tutorial in TBC and just went and made a private server character just so I could be max level and test the game out. So, like, I have no allegiance to WoW at all. Like, no allegiance. And yet people will watch my videos, the one that says that WoW Classic could save the industry, and think, oh, he must just love WoW Classic. It's funny if, like, and I'm not saying you guys necessarily think this in chat, but I notice that a lot of the time, sometimes people have a hard time divorcing opinion from a statement that could actually be verifiable, you know? So, like, if I say, for example, that WoW Classic isn't a game about just nostalgia, I think that's a true statement. Because, again, I am but one of the many people playing the game who never played the game originally. But I can also say that if WoW Classic wasn't the one to do it, let's say some random generic game tried to do it, would it be the same level of performance or, like, hoopla? Probably not. So I know part of it is hype, for sure. But every MMO is about hype. So is it really a statement anymore when people say, oh, that game's so hyped, that MMO is so hyped, it's overhyped? It's like, think about it for a second, guys. Who overhypes things? Who hypes things, period? People, right? So why are MMOs always hyped? Out of curiosity. Well, it's a social gathering with like-minded people to come together and participate in a hobby that they share with each other. Right? Makes sense? It's a social gathering, man. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm hanging out with my friends and I want to tell them about my favorite restaurant, my personal favorite restaurant, not like some objective, the best restaurant. If I'm just like, man, this restaurant's awesome, I love this restaurant, it's kick-ass. That hype is what gets my friends to go play, right? Or go eat. And then maybe they're like, hey, this is actually good. So hype is good. There's nothing wrong with hype. Where hype is bad is when hype outpaces essentially the performance of the game, right? Where the game is overhyped past its point of quality, which is obviously a serious problem. The issue in change in design is that you can have a form of nostalgia because you have an idea in your head of how WoW works, but the systems have changed so much over time that you're gaining a new perspective on it. What? You'll have to explain that one. What do you mean you could have a form of nostalgia? Because I didn't just not like WoW, I genuinely disliked WoW. I'm curious how somebody like me could be nostalgic about WoW, I guess. We all know that the MMO you hate the most is ESO. If ESO was an MMO, then I would hate it, yes. I totally agree. But now I've changed my opinion, Huel. I don't hate it anymore. Because it's a multiplayer online RPG. Why would I hate a multiplayer online RPG? It's trying to do something different, right? That's my new craze. Right? That's my new thing, right? I'm trying to push that. So I can stop holding all of my MMO criticisms and holding ESO at the throat with the knife. Like, I won't hold the knife to the neck anymore. I'll just say, you know what? Maybe your game's actually something different. Maybe it's just a multiplayer online RPG. And then all of my criticisms about the massive part and the world and the community and whatever the fuck else you guys have heard me complain about. I believe you, I hate it too. Trust me, I can turn the opinion on when you guys want it. But then you'll just have to ask the right questions. So if you want the right answers, you have to ask the right questions. Don't ask me if WoW will be successful. Ask me, what's your opinion of WoW? Do you like WoW? Like, did you like WoW? Like, ask me, like, specific questions, and I'll tell you my exact opinion about it. But, like, I don't want this in my channel to ever just be NerdSlayer's opinions. It's not really what I try and build my content on. As much as possible, I try and, like, find evidence or some way of, like, backing up what I'm saying. So when I'm talking shit, I'll usually say I'm talking shit. When I don't know what I'm talking about, I'll say I don't know what I'm talking about. When I'm speculating, I'll say I'm speculating. It established a standard that has taken over the MMO market for well over a decade. I can see why some people would hate it. Man, Pin0, you activated my trap card, man! I'm supposed to end the podcast early today. Like, I'm supposed to end the podcast early, man. Like, I don't want to rant about this shit, dude. But I really do, actually. I really do. Alright, so I'm going to tell you the story of a little-known MMO gamer by the name of Justin, who grew up in Texas, an area devoid of technology. No, I'm just kidding, but it did feel like that sometimes. And back then, in 04, 05, 06, 07, when WoW was coming out, the entire time I'm playing basically every other MMO that isn't WoW. And so, can you imagine from my perspective, WoW, when I was young, as a young child, like 9, 10, I saw that shit as like the worst thing. So I think I was 10 or 11 at the time when WoW came out. I can't remember. Too old. But I was watching WoW come out and have all of this success, and in one vein I was like, man, I should be happy, and MMO is doing well, right? But then I was playing all of these other kinds of games, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is different. And I didn't necessarily know why then. I wasn't like how I am now, but I was just like, this is different. And so at first, the only way I thought of WoW was just anger, was hate. I literally hated the game. So that's why I said it was funny that Pin0 brought that up. But like what he said literally applies to me exactly. It established a standard that has taken over the MMO market for well over a decade. I can see why people would hate it. That was exactly why I hated it. It's because I saw WoW as the killer of all of my other favorite MMOs. And so like, going back, obviously, hindsight, you mature a little bit. I know it's not so black and white. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. I also know that WoW does a lot right? So there is some good there. I'm not the angry kid anymore who just looks at WoW and is like, man, I hate WoW, right? But that's how I was at one point. So that's why I do think it's funny when I hear nostalgia mentioned with WoW, or people talk about, you know, liking WoW because I played it back then or something. It's like, I didn't just not like it. I like legit hated WoW. Legitimately hated the game. I was playing Galaxies while Galaxies was getting killed and remodeled after WoW. I played Warhammer when it was bastardized and turned into WoW 2.0. Right? Or 1.2. Or 0.8. Whatever your opinion is of Warhammer. I played SWTOR. I was there when they made the game just like WoW. So like, trust me when I say, I understand how much problems WoW has also caused. It is not my favorite game. It wouldn't even be top 20 on my list, right? Just to give you guys an idea. It wouldn't even be top 10 on my MMO list. To give you guys another idea, I would rank 10 other MMOs in front of that one. That being said, that's just my opinion. 10, 12, 20 million plus people have played and continue to play WoW over a subscription period at one point. Which means that my opinion on that kind of doesn't really matter. You see what I'm saying? So like, that's what I had to learn as a critic after a while was like, it's not that I don't want to tell you guys my opinion. I do. I just have to find the right time to do it. Because I also want to tell you guys this other shit. Sometimes if I open it up with like, I used to hate WoW, like people are just going to think I'm a WoW hater. So I opened it up a lot more amicably. I slowly let people know that I was a WoW hater. But no, for the longest time, trust me, I absolutely despise the game. That being said, playing WoW Classic now, I can understand that some of my criticisms were kind of wrong. Some of them were unfair. And honestly, the hilarious part about it is that my general attitude of just being resistant to it, period, was the biggest reason why I think I couldn't see the value of it, if that makes sense. So my own bias against it was why I couldn't see the value for the longest time. It doesn't mean that they can't grab new players, but the mass popularity of it is down to nostalgia, and it being what people loved, saw, corrupted, and craved for years. Blizzard artificially created a hunger for Classic. I think that's an interesting opinion, but I just don't see how you can talk about mass popularity being down to nostalgia when the game was already massively popular. Is it nostalgia if like the game is still popular, I guess? Like, I don't understand this nostalgia thing people talk about, honestly. I see it overblown all the time. I talked about nostalgia in my Star Wars Galaxies video. If you guys want to know what I think of nostalgia and what my opinions are of nostalgia, I would watch that video even though it's old as hell and the vocal quality is horrible. But I talked about a serious case of rose-tinted nostalgia glasses. Star Wars Galaxies fans have nostalgia glasses. I guess I just didn't really think people who like playing WoW Classic right now just have massive nostalgia glasses because I hear people complain about things in the game. I hear my own friends who play the game complain about it. I don't know. I think hype is honestly too closely associated with nostalgia. While hype and nostalgia can both create an effect that makes you want to play something, not understanding that hype functions differently than nostalgia is basically kind of saying that this is only a fad because people think it's good, whereas they're actually saying it's good because it actually is good. You see what I'm saying? That's my problem with when people bring up nostalgia a lot, is like hype and nostalgia can be similar, but they're not really the same thing. Like, nostalgia goes past reason, right? Hype goes past reason. But at what point do you have nostalgia really for a game that is just horrible? I mean, I guess you could have a small level of nostalgia, but it would quickly fade away. If the game is actually good, though, and nostalgic, then maybe you'd have some nostalgic feelings for it, but it would also just be a good game. You know? It wouldn't just be nostalgia. I think that the issue with WoW is that they are now completely different games. Yeah, pretty much. ESO came out 10 years later or so and lives very well as an MMO, mostly because of the existing Elder Scrolls fan or player base. I believe you don't like WoW. It doesn't have much player input in terms of PvP or allow major player customization. Yeah, those are two things that I enjoy a lot. Major player customization, player housing, and guild housing, and all of those just housing types of activities out in the world. And then obviously PvP. Those are my favorite things. So really, if you think about it, in the order, RP, PvP, PvE for me personally. Nostalgia doesn't require people to have played it, but rather the stark difference between how WoW has developed. Because Retail and Classic are the same game, they functionally play the same as a tab target spell rotations. But the way that they experience is shaped by the systems make them to be different. But the way that experience is shaped by the systems make them different. I couldn't disagree anymore, honestly. I think that although they're both tab target games, I think that they function very different from a tab target perspective. I think Classic WoW is not MOBA-like. There's nothing tying it to a MOBA. It does not play the least bit like a MOBA, except if you want to say attack moving is a MOBA thing. But that they had that before MOBAs. So, if anything, I feel like WoW Classic is less like a MOBA. Current WoW is more like a MOBA. So I actually do think that the games between the two, the gameplay is very different. Is ESO the best multiplayer online RPG? Oh, good luck trying to convince Final Fantasy XIV fans of that. Because they're coming after your throat. You know what, Caliber? I tell people Guild Wars 1 was my first MMO, because technically it was, right? It was advertised as that, but was it really an MMO? Probably not. Loosely, right? It actually, funny enough, applies to the multiplayer online RPG almost to a T. So you could kind of say that Guild Wars 1 was the precursor, you know? It was the precursor for that kind of game. Yes, today is a short podcast, so which means I need to move the title over to soapbox segment so I can give you guys my first impressions on ArcheAge Unchained. And I'm going to try and do that within within 20 minutes or so. So, we'll see. Will you make a Death of a Game about Skyforge? I think so. Absolutely. I will hijack Elon's starship and come over to unplug you. What about a Guild Wars Death of a Game? You know, it's so hard to do a Death of a Game for like multiplayer online RPGs because they can function with much smaller audiences. And so it's harder to say that it's dying in that same way unless I take MMO standards and apply it to it. Does that make sense? So I'd be willing to do it, but it would be less like a Guild Wars 1 failed and more like a Guild Wars 1 did really good, but then kind of ultimately had some problems. It would be more like that. WoW Classic also blocked progress for the whole genre. Oh, sorry, WoW also blocked progress. Okay, I see what you're saying. WoW also blocked progress for the whole genre, is what Tony the Toad said. Pinzero says, Classic WoW was kind of my first MMO, so that game was my standard for the longest time until I played other MMOs. I actually think that was a big reason why so many other MMOs failed, is because WoW was their first MMO. And it's not really like the same thing as the other MMOs, that people kind of look at them and compare apples to oranges, and then like, wait a minute, they're both MMOs and they're kind of similar, so like, how come this one's not more like WoW, basically? In a nutshell. People will literally hate a game and still play it. We need a buzzword for that. Yeah, how come we don't have a word for that? I'm putting my top detectives on that. With that being said, being older and just better in general, I can sort of see the flaws with the game in a long-term sense. Oh no, absolutely. I'm glad you can, Pinzero. That's very interesting to say that. Because I feel like not a lot of people will admit that, to be honest. But I'm glad that you can say that. That's what I try and teach you guys. I don't try and teach you guys, theme park MMOs are evil. That's not me. I'm not that content creator. My problem is theme park MMOs aren't sustainable. And my evidence is, look at that genre. There's my evidence. Like, shows like right here is when like the screen man pops up like the list of dead MMOs on my channel, right? I find that more people being critical of WoW playing WoW Classic. Not negative, they are just analyzing the game a lot further and understand how small cracks snowballed into giant fissures. That's a thing that I highlighted actually before WoW Classic came out, that was what I was most excited about, was the opportunity for people to basically learn how things were kind of screwed up initially. You know what I mean? You know what, people, I will just go play SWTOR again and be done with this. What I still don't get into my head, WoW still has no proper housing, not even proper guild halls. Apparently guild halls are actually in the game, but they were never used. Like, someone recently told me that. That they were actually in the game, but they weren't utilized. WoW PvP is pretty good, though. I actually would disagree. I used to have that opinion, actually, before I tried Classic WoW, because I was, I guess, hyped up by PvP, because I heard a lot of players saying they were ready to PvP, so I was excited, right? And then I realized they only mean PvP when it's Phase 2, when they actually get little internet points for PvPing. So I don't want to talk about the PvP in WoW, because honestly, it's probably the biggest letdown I've had. I love the PvP in the game in terms of, like, playing it. It's fun. The gameplay is good. The class, like, archetypes and class design, one versus one meta, but also just like group fighting meta. Like all of that's fun in the game. I'm not trying to say that there isn't some fun with PvP. When I'm saying that I'm not having fun PvPing in WoW, it's because nobody really PvPs. Like maybe I get jumped like once a day, maybe like by a rogue or something. Or if they have like 5 or 4 dudes, they'll show up and gank me as well sometimes. But again, maybe because I'm playing a hunter, but PvP is pretty sparse. If we're comparing retail versus classic in terms of gameplay, retail has a much higher focus on class skills to actually play. Yeah, because it's more based around an identity of following a rotation, which is more like a MOBA. MMOs originally weren't designed to have like standardized rotations. I know I'm like sounding totally crazy right now. For the people who played MMOs back then, you remember we had to make our own rotations. There wasn't no optimal rotation. These days, most MMOs or multiplayer online RPGs, if you want to call them that, they're not really designed in that same way. They're more so designed to function like a MOBA in that you have your main damage ability and everything is kind of built around that. Five subs says he will not make it in 20 minutes. I'm looking at the time right now and I'm already over like 6 minutes or 16 minutes, so probably not. The good news is I don't have to do an AMA section since everybody's asking questions right now, so I'm handling that now. I hope they make a sequel to Guild Wars 1. It had some pretty cool ideas. When you say sequel, you got me. I was gonna say, when you say sequel, do you mean a sequel to that game or like Guild Wars 2? It had several mass exoduses, same as Neverwinter. Okay. Fair enough. I don't know. Maybe I'll wait until we talk more about multiplayer online RPGs before I handle Guild Wars 1, because I want to stop calling it an MMO, because I'm not doing it any favors at this point. In German, it's called I'm not even gonna try. I'll ask my uncle though. He speaks German. You mean addicts? Fellneth, man. I guess it doesn't sound as funny when you put it that way. Hate play, same thing as hate watching. Sunken cost fallacy. That's why they keep playing. Probably a big part of it. As opposed to the flourishing non-theme park MMOs. I mean, I don't think there is a non-flourishing theme park MMO that you guys don't already know about. Like, if you're not going to play the ones that are currently in existence, then you're going to have to wait. And I don't blame you guys for not wanting to play the ones that are currently in existence, because games like RuneScape and EVE at this point are also old as hell. So, like, that's also another problem that you're dealing with. Apparently, player housing was a thing that they were playing around with since Vanilla WoW. Yeah, there you go, Penzero. That sums it up. PvP in WoW is fun when people actually fight, which is not the majority of the time in my experience. I'm in STV right now. Alright. Well, actually, I might have sat myself in an inn, so I might actually even literally be in the exact place I'm supposed to be, where all of this PvP WoW fans always say is magically going to happen. Never does, man. I'm just talking shit because I'm wondering. Stranglethorn Vale, man. Where is everybody, dude? Come kill me. Come fight me, please. Come gank my ass. It was considered a co-op RPG, if I remember correctly. But an arena game like that in our market will be successful. I don't think it was considered a co-op RPG, honestly, because it was created by the biggest MMO publisher ever. So I'm pretty sure they saw it as an MMO, you know? If you do a thing you like, but at the same time it's hurtful to you, the translation would be self-flagellation. Ah, I have heard that statement, actually, or that point. Just got jumped in 1,000 Needles. Feels bad getting ganged up by tiny gnomes. Yeah, no, if there's a group of alliance, like 4 or 5, they will jump me. But is that really PvP if I'm like 1 versus 5? I guess technically. Not really. Like, not like that I could actually enjoy. I play throughout the day, honestly. I'll play at whatever time. I'll play 3 a.m., I'll play 12 p.m., I'll play 5 p.m. I've played throughout various times throughout the day, and I'll say that STV is certainly more populated later at night when the younger kids are on. But largely, people still have been ignoring each other on my server. So again, I don't know if it's just my server or what, but I came into WoW Classic thinking I was going to get a big shock with like PvP, and like, not saying that I wasn't ready for it, but I'm saying a shock as in like I didn't expect there to be that much PvP in WoW. But people were like, no dude, Classic WoW PvP, trust me. I was like, okay, alright. And then I got into the game and I was just like, you guys only win a PvP when you get your little honor trinkets, right? Like, that's the problem with these kinds of games. When you make a game or an MMO, like a theme park game, the only way people want a PvP is if you get a reward for it. Like, an actual like point reward in the game? What if like, killing me because you hate me, or killing me because I'm the enemy, or killing me because I provide some benefit to your faction, or your given area, or I change the way that the game plays, or whatever else, right? It really just comes down to, right now in Classic WoW, why would you PvP, period, right? Open world PvP will most likely die if the queue PvP starts. I think it's definitely going to die when that happens. Except for the fact that at first people will still do it just because they want to get the honor points. Even though Battlegrounds give you way more honor, so I get what you're saying, I think people will still do open world PvP, but up until that point where they've reached their desired rank, a couple months in, I do think that the PvP open world scene is going to die, like, pretty fast if people don't change the way that they play the game themselves. Because currently, right now, WoW lends itself to not being conducive to that kind of game. So, like, either players are going to have to treat it differently, or I don't really think anything's going to change, right? 10 minutes, alright. I got 10 minutes. Maybe it's a US versus EU thing, playing the two main servers in EU and PvP popping a lot. Yeah, it could be, honestly. It could be. I hear that EU is popping off over there. You guys have a lot of servers on Shatra, or a lot of players on Shatra, for example. I just think that it's probably what Pinzero's saying, is people just want to hit max level without having issues. They don't want to have to deal with fighting me, right? Open world will not kill Q PvP if you get good incentive in the open world, like getting gold or other benefits. Yeah, I'm not trying to say that as a general statement. I just mean in the case of WoW, I think it's a problem in WoW because Battlegrounds give you more honor. So, essentially, if internet honor points are the only thing you care about PvPing in WoW, which, by the way, it seems like that's the majority of the case for most players, then when you get your honor points, you're likely going to focus on just getting more honor points than necessarily PvPing. And so that's why people speculate that once the Battlegrounds are released, open world PvP will just die again, because people will yet again go back to Battlegrounds as the main way to make honor. So that's not my opinion. When the honor system comes out, I'm going to be open world PvPing in that honor system. But I can understand why other people would see it as like, well, why would you open world PvP when you can just do Battlegrounds so you don't get ganked? On Guild Wars' website, it's written online RPG. Right, but you're talking about online RPG in 2019. I'm talking about when the game was created. People are going to be very disappointed when the honor system gets implemented, when they realize just how much of a grind that system is. Only if you mean, like, getting the max rank. But if you find PvP for the sake of PvP fun, like I do, the honor system's just an added bonus, you know? So I like honor systems because I already find PvP fun. But if you don't find PvP fun, is the honor system enough of a progression to make you not want to feel like it's just some big slog? I mean, I don't see how it wouldn't be, you know? Like, how would you not take it that way? It's just another grind you have to get through if you don't really like PvPing, you know? So, max rank is literal hell. Back in classic days, there were actually guilds that sold the top position for a week. Doesn't surprise me. Totally true. They should invent something new to push even further for open world PvP and WoW. They could do that in Classic Plus. In fact, there's like some very easy things they could change about the game. Let's see if they're able to do it, let alone if they do it, period. Battlegrounds were fun back in the day when it wasn't clear which builds and rotations were good, and patches changed balancing. will be interesting to see if Battlegrounds are any fun now. They still will be fun because ultimately, I'm not going to rant about meta because I'm going to make a video about the meta because MMO players are literally slaves to the meta. I'm going to make a video about that. But like, MMO players are literal slaves. Like, they are slaves. They cannot think for themselves when it comes to the meta. And I hope someday, soon, I can make a video called Breaking the Meta. And I can teach you guys how to play MMOs without caring about the meta. Because, as you guys will see, as you watch me play, I'm sure at some point, I don't give a fuck about the meta. And yet, I still can make it work. And why is that? Because saying I don't give a fuck about the meta doesn't mean that I don't pay attention to the meta. It just means that I know what the meta is, and I know what I want to do and how it affects the meta. So what I'm trying to say is that if you look at classes from the perspective of flavor of the month, then yes, the meta is the only thing you should listen to. To tell you whatever is flavor of the month at the moment, yeah, just pay attention to the meta. But what if I told you that you could still be a good player without playing something that was flavor of the month? Shocking. I know. I'm good, Felneth. I'm just, and I don't mean to pile on you guys when y'all bring up meta, because y'all say meta a lot. I don't blame y'all. You just say meta because that's what you were raised on. I was raised on meta. It was only just like, honestly, since playing ArcheAge Unchained hilariously, which I need to still do, and Card is going to hate me because I'm going to go over the time. So he's probably going to leave, but we can still do that after. I wanted to give you guys my first impressions about ArcheAge Unchained, but what I wanted to say is playing ArcheAge Unchained is what made me think about the meta again. I was like, you know what? Like, I played Rift and I played ArcheAge, and I never cared about the meta back then. And it never really seemed to affect me. And when I talk to good players, good ArcheAge players, good PvP ArcheAge players, they basically tell me what I believe as well. They tell me like, well, it doesn't really matter. The meta doesn't matter if you just understand what the meta is and what it stands for and what it does. So it's like, I'm not trying to say fuck the meta as in like ignore the meta, don't look at the meta at all. I'm saying look at the meta and then say, how can we say fuck you to the meta? That's what you should be thinking about as MMO players. Maybe I'm just a min-maxer, or maybe I'm just fucking crazy and I'm sweating my ass off. Look at how fucking hot it is in my house. Look, my armpits are sweating, but even my shirt is sweating down here. That's how passionate I get about min-maxing, alright? But seriously, when you talk about the meta, you talk about breaking the meta. That should be your desire. Not to follow the meta, but to break the meta. As the player who's trying to push the boundaries, if you just want to do what everybody else is doing, then you will be countered like everybody else. Let me rephrase that. So I'll give you guys a martial art example because it's the thing that I'm probably the best at that's not gaming, right? So in martial arts, I've been training for a long time, both stand-up, on the ground, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, karate, taekwondo, you name it, right? I've been sparring since I was a child, basically. The reason why I like to talk about martial arts when it comes to metas is that in martial arts, there is no such thing as a meta in the sense that this is the only thing people are doing. It literally doesn't exist. And the reason is because in a fight, just like in most video games, by the way, when it comes down to who wins, all it comes down to is that the other person found a way to win. And what I mean is that theoretically, if people are both using the same build, it's going to come down to which person plays that better, right? But all the scenarios aren't equal. And actually, Brawley brought this up on the stream yesterday, and I think it gets ignored a lot. But the way to get equal in a MMO when it comes to meta is more so based around your power as a character, and less how your character plays, right? So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not going to sit here and say that one healer in one specific instance wouldn't be better than another healer. What I'm saying is that making general statements like, oh, blank is the meta, I mean, so? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the statement itself doesn't really mean anything. To just be like, oh, but that's the meta, oh, but that's the meta. It's like, but the meta doesn't mean that you can't change it. It just means that it's currently working because people have found it to currently work. But if something is the meta, and this is what I want to leave you guys with my martial arts example. If something is the meta, it means that it's a pretty effective way of winning. But does it mean that it's the only effective way of winning? No, it's just the most common. So essentially what it means is that it's the most common way to play the game, is what the meta really means, right? It's like the common way to play the game is what people are looking at. Oh, so most people are playing Frostmage in WoW because it's one of the best DPS classes and a good PvP class. So the meta is playing a Frostmage, right? Like at least right now in Classic WoW. But can a Frostmage beat every single class in the game effortlessly? Like obviously not. Being a Frostmage doesn't make you good inherently. You still have to be the best Frostmage. And let's say that there's now 3 million new Frostmages. Now you're one of 3 million Frostmages. So not only are you going to be lesser known if you do get good, because you're going to have to get that much better to be different amongst 3 million different people, but you're also literally doing the same thing as 3 million other people. So like the reason why I'm laughing is because I know like the hardcore players in chat, and thank you Brawley for stopping by on the podcast yesterday for explaining that, but a lot of the hardcore MMO players know what I'm talking about. And hardcore players just in general, and whatever you do, if you're a good player at chess, you know what I'm talking about. If you're good at backgammon, you know what I'm talking about. And it's essentially that there is 2 versions of the game that is being played at all times. In every game system that you will ever encounter, at least in my experience. 2 versions. There's the game itself, and then there's the player, right? So you're playing the game, and then you're playing the player. And I've talked about this concept before, and don't worry, I will put all of this in a video so it's easier to understand, and so I'm not ranting and sweating so much, but you're playing the game itself, but you're also playing the player. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're only playing the game, then the meta is the only thing that matters. Does that make sense? Because you're just playing the game at whatever the game itself considers to be the best. But if you're also playing the player, meaning that if this guy's playing a Frostmage, I know I can counter him by using Viper Sting because I can steal his mana. Because I know he's a mage. Because I know a mage needs mana. You see what I'm saying? Essentially, the meta becomes not really the meta once you actually understand that you can play the player, not just the class. So that's basically what I'm trying to say is that when you play the game, what I mean by playing the game, I mean, what are your stats? What class are you? What level are you? What's your gear? What's your spec or abilities? And those 5 things are pretty much never equal in an open world PvP fight, unless you're playing like Guild Wars where everything is kind of normalized. And so you have like 5 different things to jumble between. But generally speaking, when you say get good at a video game, in an MMO context, which you actually mean most of the time, is powerful. You get powerful, right? So your character gets more power, more gear, blah, blah, blah. Playing the person in a game is more about knowing what a person would do, right? And countering that. So say, for example, in a video game, maybe in this particular instance, the player would just do DPS. But what if I also make an assumption that he knows that I'm low health, so maybe now is the opportunity he will blow his offensive cooldowns to kill me. And so if I blow my defensive cooldowns at the same time, I can bait him into wasting his DPS cooldowns. That's just like a simple example of playing the player, right? So what I'm trying to say is in that example, did the class really play into consideration nearly as much? Or was it more about the power of the characters and then how the person was played or how they played, right? So really when it comes down to it, most PvP fights more so come down to how you play them and how you play the player, right? Less of how you play the game. Anyway, I know that's a long rant and it's kind of hard to understand that if you don't have something that you're like good at, that you can kind of see what I'm saying, but like whatever you guys are good at, I know all of you are good at something. Find the thing that you're good at and then look at that thing and think to yourself, is there an absolute meta in this thing? And I bet you will always say the answer is no. Because unless it's a very particular kind of game or a particular kind of hobby, there's not some like set in stone meta. The meta is constantly being rewritten. If you suck at video games, you won't understand. I mean, maybe. You said it, dude. I didn't say it. I don't like to think of people as either you suck or you're good. I like to think of it as like a big broad spectrum of like, the more you educate yourself, the more your keybinds are better, the more powerful your character is, the more meta he is, right? That's what's going to make you a better player. But it's so interesting that when it comes to meta, anytime you talk about MMOs, period, every time I've ever talked about MMOs with other players in regards to classes, which ones you like to pick, which ones you like to play, people always talk about the meta. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. Sorry, but I'm just kind of reacting, you know, off the cuff here. But like, I do feel that way, you know? I've always felt like, why are we so focused on what everybody else is doing? Focus on what you're doing and look at what they're doing and think to yourself, well, if I want to be the best 1v1 class, can I play a shaman in WoW? Maybe. But would it be easier if you played a rogue? Probably. So that's what the meta means in a nutshell. Yeah, exactly. The people that create the meta are the good players who are saying this works. But what's to stop another good player from basically taking what they do and doing the counter to that thing? Well, that's exactly what the meta is, basically. You're always countering each other. So, like, if everybody's playing a Frost Mage, that's why I played a Hunter. Do you see what I'm saying? I knew everybody was going to play a Frost Mage in WoW and a Warrior, because those are like the two most popular classes that have been voted over and over again. And so I picked a Hunter because of the open world PvP, but also because specifically it does really well against those two classes. So like a lot of the time, yeah, maybe people don't PvP with a Hunter because they don't want to have to deal with that. But I've been killed by a mage before. So once again, it's like, it doesn't matter, you know? Good mages have killed me. The build is pretty annoying. How do I deal with this? Yes, basically. Before YouTube or Twitch, there was no meta. So just be good at what you can play and you don't need to watch the meta or people making guides. Basically, like, you can learn from other people, but never look at learning materials like, well, if I just don't do this, then I'm screwed. Look at it as like, you know what? What if I wanted to change my build? Why can't I change my build? Is what you should be asking yourself. Not just, oh, well, I just need to be all the same build. Everyone's playing the same thing. The big issue when developers start designing heavily on the meta instead of letting it grow organically. I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Certain meta things... 1 second. Getting pings. Alright, I'm at 2 hours, guys. I'm going to answer this last little... Or I'm going to make this last little point, and then I'm going to talk about ArcheAge a bit. Certain meta things can't be broken just by design. Shaman hunters do counter mate. So, can you tell me an example of a meta thing that can't be broken? I'm curious. Because I'm willing to bet there probably isn't a thing that can't be broken. I think most of it can be broken. Rules are made to be broken, I mean, ultimately, right? That's kind of how I look at them. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just a difference of opinion, ultimately. But I'm just telling you guys, you will be better players and better people if you stop thinking in terms of the meta. Just do what you want. Do what you're best at. EVE has a long history of creating metas, and people make counters to it, and people making counters to it. The meta of gold sinks is that you will lose gold. Rogue versus warrior. Warriors will always kick a rogue's ass thanks to overpower. That's not true, dude. I know what you mean. You mean most of the time a warrior will beat a rogue, and it's not just because of overpower, it's also because of the armor, right? Like, one's wearing plate and banging on the other one, while the other one's not wearing plate. So it literally is just mathematically speaking, if a warrior sat there and just autoed and a rogue just sat there and autoed, the warrior would win every time, right? But I don't know if you can necessarily say that every single time the rogue is going to lose, because there are a lot of very, very, very good rogue players, way better than me at WoW, that I'm sure could make quick work of some good warriors. Again, the point is not because something can, it somehow means that it's now more effective. It's more that to say that something is set in stone in the meta would literally have to mean that it doesn't change. Like, that can't be changed. And I find most things can be changed. Even in the meta, you know? Like, maybe the closest example of a meta that's set in stone could be chess, right? Because you have finite pieces, finite moves, finite time. So there's a lot of controlled variables, but most of the time, there are so many variables that the meta is kind of like the last thing that you would be thinking about. Like, for example, if I load up CSGO right now, I'm like some average double AK player if I don't practice, right? So if I play more, I obviously should get better at the game. But what if I played the game only using, I don't know, like a P90 or a what's like a cheese gun, like a Ranger or something like that? Could I get kills? Absolutely. Is it meta? Not really. But it works because I'm not playing against pros, right? The meta is exploited by good players. So if you're trying to say that the best warrior would beat the best rogue the majority of the time, I'm more than willing to agree with you. But if you're trying to say that a rogue would lose every single time, I don't see how that's even possible, honestly. That seems like it'd be pretty impossible to prove. We need a chess balance patch. Honestly, maybe it would make the game more fun. WoW does have a rock, paper, scissors thing. It does. Most MMOs do. But rock, paper, scissors doesn't mean that something doesn't work in the meta. Meta is honestly a very nuanced discussion that I think a lot of people are talking about without maybe necessarily like the thought process they need if they want to have a discussion about meta, right? P90 is a great meta gun for double AK. It actually probably is. If I load up right now and I'm double AK and I pick up the P90, I can entry frag everybody and smoke people. See, you're right. Like, it's a funny joke though. MP7's better handling, but the P90 cartridge is superior. Yeah, no, you can spray and pray. That's why I said P90, because it's a spray and pray weapon. Yeah, when people say paper, scissors, rock, I think what they mean is, like, at the core, a melee class will beat this other kind of class because of X, X, and X. They mean, like, loosely based on, like, the mechanics that are presented in the game. But that also doesn't take into consideration the skill level, the level of the player, the level of their gear, how much they play the game, right? Alright, finally, let's talk a little bit about ArcheAge Unchained. So I wanted to give you guys my quick first impressions about ArcheAge Unchained. This is not going to be a long video, or a long segment, I should say, just because I probably will make a video on it at some point, and I can talk about it in that video. My impressions so far with ArcheAge Unchained have been, obviously, first let's just talk about what ArcheAge Unchained is. Quick version. ArcheAge Unchained is the, like, third or fourth reboot version of ArcheAge at this point. However, it's the first reboot version by a new publisher that acquired the game just recently, Gamago. And so Gamago has tried to do essentially their approach to ArcheAge, and you kind of have to make another server or another game if you want to fix ArcheAge's main problems, which are based around monetization and the cash shop. So they couldn't just, like, fix the previous game. They had to come up with a new game, new server. That way they can actually have a cash shop that doesn't impact that game. But also, there's other things in ArcheAge Unchained that they're promising this time around. They're promising that the game won't be pay to win. They're promising that the game will be buy to play, and then after that, everything else is optional. They're promising that... what else do we have here that I've heard about ArcheAge Unchained that's been promised so far? It's got a 64-bit client. They're redoing the graphics for the game, or have redid the graphics for the game. It's launching with 6.0, which is the most recent Korean version of the game. So largely, like ArcheAge Unchained, although it's launching or relaunching as an older game, unlike Classic WoW, despite being constantly compared to Classic WoW, it's not really applicable because Classic WoW doesn't have new content, right? It didn't come out with new content. ArcheAge Unchained is coming out with new content and also changing its business model. So they're similar, right? Older games coming back onto the scene and trying to show everybody what's what. But in ArcheAge Unchained's case, it's different. Just think of ArcheAge Unchained as Gamago's ArcheAge. And so at this point on, if they screw the pooch, it's probably it for ArcheAge, right? I don't think there's any more good nature surrounding the name and and good karma surrounding the name. If they screw it up this time, it would be a pretty big failure for them. Now, ArcheAge Unchained, let me post this link here, just to make sure that you guys are up to date on all the important dates. Sorry, I'm like really tired, apparently. I just felt it now. Scrolling up. Alright. I think it was from yesterday, perhaps? Well, damn it, I posted it. Oh no, I posted it in the announcements. It's on a tweet. Here we go. Alright, so here are the current dates for ArcheAge Unchained. And I will link this in chat, so please follow this in chat. So ArcheAge Unchained is giving founder access on the public test server starting October 1st to the 7th. That means people who've bought a founder pack, which at the bare minimum is 25 bucks, and at the higher end is 80 bucks. You get to create your name, reserve your character name, and then also reserve your character name, and then play the public test server. On the 7th to the 13th, that's where the open access for the public test server begins. So you don't need to pre-order it. So if you're not interested so far in trying out the game, you can always try it during the free period. And I didn't realize that they were keeping these as separate dates, so I kept telling people, oh, the free period is on the 1st, It's not on the 1st. Sorry about that, guys. They're not even clear with the information. Their website doesn't even clearly say the information, so I had to go find this thread myself on the forums, but there you go, right there. General access to the public test server begins. And then October 15th is the actual official release of the game. The game also should be having a Steam release, as well as a Glyph release. So Glyph is like the current shop that they use, but they should be also launching on Steam. There's no current Steam page though, so don't go look for it. It doesn't exist yet. All right, and then basically it talks about some of the major points here. You're keeping the free-to-play version. So essentially, the free-to-play version of ArcheAge will still exist, but ArcheAge Unchained is the buy-to-play version. The fact that it's buy-to-play matters a lot in regards to how the game is structured, monetization-wise. And what I mean by that is that ArcheAge as a free-to-play game makes money through its cash shop primarily. ArcheAge as a subscription game makes money primarily through subscriptions. ArcheAge as a buy-to-play game primarily makes money through the buy-to-play, of course, and then the cash shop. So the Arch Pass is another little thing, but honestly, I don't think they're going to make like a whole lot of money off of that thing yet, unless they sexy it up a bit. So that's all like the basic information about ArcheAge Unchained out of the way. As for my actual first impressions of it, I've got the chance to test it out. I have a stream on my YouTube and a stream on my Twitch, so go check it out if you want to. I got to show everybody what's in the cash shop, so go watch my most recent video on YouTube. You can basically find out everything you need to know about how's the cash shop work, how are they going to handle launch, what's pay to win, what's pay to convenience. Is there pay to win, I should say? There isn't in my experience so far. Right now, as it stands, my impressions with ArcheAge Unchained are as follows. I think that it's a good effort by Gamago to essentially try and rid a lot of the negative karma and really just negative stigma surrounding ArcheAge as a game, especially when the game itself, just in terms of its merit, deserves more respect, but it doesn't get that respect because, well, the developers screwed it up by making you hate the business model. But if they can fix the business model, the idea is that maybe there's enough there, game-wise, that they could save. So, as it stands right now, looking at the cash shop, looking at the Arch Pass system, and looking at the cost of the game, I don't think the game is pay to win, nor do I think it's a bad value. I think, honestly, if you're not willing to at least try the game out for free on the 7th to the 12th of October, and maybe you're more excited of the game, maybe you don't want to wait, I think a $25 purchase or a $30 purchase is more than worth the amount of value you'll get from playing the game. So, straight up, if you're going to ask me the question, is $30 worth the value that you get from playing the game? I will tell you guys unequivocally, yes. Now, anything past that, the initial value, we'll have to figure it out, right? We'll have to see how much longevity the game has. We'll have to see if they do indeed add more cash shop items to the game. All of that is kind of wait and see. But if you're asking me point blank right now, the most important question, which is the game pay to win right now? The answer is no. And if you're asking me, is the game worth the money to spend to go play the game? I would say it is. So that's kind of all I'm going to offer really right now in terms of my first impressions. Because like I talk a lot about all of my first impressions in my video that I streamed. So I don't want to like repeat shit. And plus I need to leave today. I said I was going to not podcast as long. So. Any other questions you guys have before I can leave? They can still screw you if you keep paying and playing the game after they've announced new bad things. So what I mean is like, if you keep playing the game right now and spend loads of money on the cash shop, and then all of a sudden they drop a pay-to-win item, and you're like, man, this is just exactly what I'm saying. Like, I spent all this money, and then they screwed it up. It's like, who are you? Why are you blaming them? You did that yourself. If you just go into the game, pay the box price, and maybe buy an Arch Pass, like, that's not a lot of money, guys, for the amount of hours you can get out of playing the game. So that's kind of why I'm like phrasing it in that way, I guess. What's the situation with the servers of ArcheAge? So at launch, ArcheAge Unchained is planning on having 3 servers, but I do believe that they have said that they're willing to scale up to as much as 8 if needed. So could be ArcheAge Q Wars again. And what MMO would it be if there wasn't a big queue to log into the game, right? I just wish OC had a bigger player base, because ArcheAge was one of my most enjoyed games when it released, but the ping is just, ugh. What is your ping to the closest server? Like 150, 200 maybe? Stuck in the queue meta. The Arch Pass isn't really a premium sub in the same way, because I was looking at it and it offers basically none of the rewards that you would get from having a premium membership. So I actually don't think it's good to compare the Arch Pass system to a premium sub. It's actually just better to just compare it to what it is, which is a Battle Pass system from Fortnite, or the War Chest system from StarCraft, or Compendium from Dota. It's like the same kind of shit. You cannot pre-order on Steam and only Glyph. It's so random and annoying. Alright, that was just my little, I guess, basic first impressions concerning the price, concerning how everything's being set up. At the moment right now, if you want me to break down some of the biggest things I think to watch out for with ArcheAge Unchained, it's going to be, obviously, be careful about your initial investment. Don't just think because I'm saying it'll be fun to put, to buy the base game, that means you should go spend $80 on the exquisite pack and all the other cash shop items. Do with your money what you will, but I'm just suggesting that if you're asking me the question of, is the game itself worth it? I think it is. So, other things to watch out for, though, are in the coming months. What will they add to the cash shop? What will they add to the Arch Pass system, if anything, in terms of, like, egregious things? Also look into the launch of the game. How well will they handle the launch? Because, frankly speaking, ArcheAge has always had problems with launch since the beginning, and probably will again. But if the problems are bad enough this time, it might be curtains for the game, Because I think ArcheAge Unchained is going to exhaust a lot of the goodwill remaining for that name period, ArcheAge. And if it doesn't work out, I will do my part, that's for sure, to remind everybody that it didn't, Because as soon as Gamma Go, if they wanted to, they want to add things into the game that are going to change the way the game functions right now, therefore change my opinion on it, then of course I'm going to change my opinion. And I'm going to be the first person to come out and say, that's not okay. I don't agree with that shit. All pre-order packs are good values just based on the amount of credits that they give you for the real-world value. Gotta imagine they would get sued if they added pay-to-win after they marketed. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because Black Desert Online already did that exact thing. In fact, I think Rift did it with Rift Prime as well. So that's why people were so skeptical. That's why whenever people come to me with skepticism, I don't tell them not to be skeptical. I just, essentially kind of explain my reasoning. So they're like, they can still be skeptical, but understand where I'm coming from. But alright, I don't have anything else for you guys. I'm leaving, so I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for joining me on today's podcast. It was episode 52. We talked about ArcheAge a bit. We talked about Tencent acquiring Funcom. We reacted to what little was shown from the Warhammer mobile MMO. And we talked about meta and a bunch of other kind of more esoteric concepts, especially concepts that I don't really get a whole lot of time to talk about out loud with people. So it's just, it's fun to talk about that stuff. But I definitely do plan on putting a lot of that stuff into a video format, so it's a lot more, concise and put together and all that stuff that I like. Yeah, thank you everybody for stopping by. Thank you everybody for joining me. Go check out ArcheAge Unchained for free, right? 7 to the 12th, or right, the 7th to the 13th. Public test server, general access. Just go try it out. Don't take my word for it. Never just take my word for it. All right? Never just take my word for it. Anyway, tomorrow the public test server goes live, and that's going to be really fun to watch. So if you guys want to watch me stream that, I would tune in tomorrow. I'm going to try and get at least like a good 4 or 5 hours of it. That should be long enough to get me to level 30 and get into some fun PvP action already. So if you guys actually want to see how the game functions when it has players, I would come watch me stream tomorrow, or watch someone else stream tomorrow. It doesn't have to just be me, but the previous media streams, there was like nobody playing on the server. So like we couldn't really have PvP or actually test out any of the PvP. What faction are you going to be, I guess? Well, I don't even know what faction or what servers I'm going to play on yet. I'm still figuring all of that out. Anyway, I'm saying goodbye for good. See you guys later. You're not holding me today. Good job, by the way, Pin Zero. You crit me.